I3. All right, so this is our website. So you can access it by going to iVueworld.com. We're too poor to actually buy the domain iVue.com. But as you could read there, really all of what we're doing at iVue is designed to make the world more accessible. And more tangibly speaking, I'll actually go out and grab one of our drones here in a second. Really focused on making drones like the next computer, next car for the everyday person, where right now if you're a drone operator, pretty much you're an aerial photographer, videographer, as you were just watching, even law enforcement, they're using drones now. Within agriculture, they're using drones for like spraying and monitoring crops. Deliveries, of course, there's pretty large companies out there already managing delivery operations with drones, but no one is really even thinking about drones really in the same way that we are, let alone actually working to build the technology and kind of evangelize it to where every household, every business owns their own drone. And even thinking about it from a delivery perspective, having your own drone that you set out in the front yard and you can send that drone to the local Amazon locker, the local fast food restaurant, the local retail store. And kind of think about it in this way, if the automotive industry that was built here in the US, you know, back in the early 1900s, everyone drove here, or maybe a parent drove them or whatever, right? Think about if the automotive industry was built in a way that the only way that we all got to use a car was through a public transportation service offered by the government or through a private transportation service like Uber or taxis. And that's essentially how the drone industry is being built right now and how it's being regulated here in the United States. That less and less so it's becoming possible for individuals to operate a drone or even small businesses to operate a drone that provides any real utility. And I actually got into somewhat of an online argument or conversation, if you will, with this drone operator that we work with. Well, if a drone's providing you utility as a consumer, doesn't that make a commercial operation? Well, no, right? A car can provide you utility by just driving it to the grocery store to pick up your own groceries. Is that a commercial operation? No. Does it provide you utility? Yes. And right now, there is no legal pathway for any just recreational everyday person to operate a drone in that sort of way where you could send it to the local grocery store, have it land in like the equivalent of a curbside pickup spot, because you need to have your line of sight, right? You guys may have learned that already or heard of that. Well, if you're a Part 107 or under these new Part 108 guidelines, if you're a company, you can actually get a waiver under Part 107 or Part 108. You're just going to be able to operate a drone beyond visual line of sight. But again, you need to be a large enterprise or a government organization to operate under the upcoming Part 108, or even just if you wanted to operate BVLOS under Part 107, you literally have to, start a company and then apply for a waiver, when I don't think it should be illegal for just, again, setting out your drone, and not even to like the local grocery store, right? Just think about like a neighbor's house, right? You need a couple eggs as you're making breakfast or dinner or whatever, right? Or a cup of flour, a cup of sugar. Right now, I would be a criminal if I were to send my drone over to my neighbor's house and not always keep an eye on it. But to me, we already have laws on the books that if worst comes to worst, my drone were to fall out of the sky, land on someone, kill them while I didn't have my eyes on it, charge me with manslaughter, right? So I know this is kind of beyond what you guys probably care or think about too much as far as how drones are used, but this is the way that I think can really provide a value to not just the aerial photographers and videographers making money with drones today, or some of those more like niche use cases I was talking about, and really make it part of our everyday lives, right? But that's where we'll go into more depth about what we're doing as far as the drone development, both on the hardware and software front. And then in the meantime, as anyone is interested in doing like media production work, where again, most people make money with drones today, we do have ability to work with us there. But let me pull up iVue Robotics. So as Robin was saying, we have our main company called iVue, and then we have a media division called iVue Media and a hardware division called iVue Robotics. Let me go get a couple of our developer, and I'll pass those around. All right, so we had some difficulties on the way over this morning. We have our equipment wagon with all of like our video production equipment. It decided it'd be a great idea to tip over. And so this developer that was completely built out, this is actually our developer XE. You could see was broken, or might be able to tell that it was broken with the full weight of the wagon and all the equipment falling over on it this morning. So if you're carrying drones around, keep them in their protective cases. But if you want, you could still open up the top cover. Previously, we actually had screws that required you to always keep a screwdriver when you wanted to adjust the electronics or the wiring, plug anything in, connect anything on the inside. So that's been a big change that we've made over the last really few months, maybe the last year or so. And again, same sort of deal with this is our base model developer, where this can carry up to a 3-pound payload. That model can carry up to a 5-pound payload. And then what you guys will be working with, probably more so towards the end of the school year or the semester, we have our new developer mini, which also suffered as a casualty from the wagon that fell on it this morning. So we actually started introducing these as DIY build kits because part of getting people to use drones on a day-to-day basis is learning how to repair them, learning how to build them, learning how to write software for them, at least to some degree, right? Not expecting everyone to do this, but I'm going to make a lot of analogies to like the early days of the automotive industry, early days of the personal computer industry, where the automotive industry, before we just have like a mechanic shop on every street corner just about, you had to learn how to maintain and repair your own car, right? And you know, we've been kind of fortunate to some degree that China has just been able to mass produce, you know, millions of drones that we can, you know, basically just treat as if they're disposable. But now that, you know, don't want to get too much into politics, that the Band-Aid has been ripped off, that we need to at least have some ability to mass produce our own electronics, especially the kind of critical ones that we rely on, like electric motors, for example, not just ones this small for drones, but also those used in electric vehicles as well, right? Like cars. And so we're just trying to get people more used to the idea of like, yeah, we want you to like operate a drone, but that's pretty much going to do itself, right? Where there's real opportunity, not just, you know, down the road, but right here, right now, is anyone that wants to even start a drone repair business. There was a local guy, his name, I'm actually blanking on it. It was Rob Schwartz. Yeah, Rob Schwartz. He was like the go-to drone repair guy for like all of Metro Atlanta. Long story short, he got involved in modifying drones that were being used for delivering contraband into prisons around here. So I guess there's another money-making opportunity. Maybe one not so much on the up and up, but on the repair side, again, kind of like the early days of the automotive industry, you know, there's really no mechanic shops established. And I was actually just up in Ohio recently. A guy younger than me, I know I look hopefully maybe about your guys' age, like I could be in class right alongside you. This kid's 24 years old and has a multi-million-dollar drone repair business. And so it may not be the most glamorous work, but literally I would say anyone here, if they wanted to start making hundreds of thousands of dollars literally next year, and maybe even more than $100,000 by the end of this year. Just learn how to solder and start repairing drones. And all of that content is already available there on YouTube, because there's a lot of drone operators out there. Even in the United States, there's close to 2 million drone operators out there. But there's very few drone operators that are also like engineers, developers, or technicians that actually understand the components that go inside of them. And of course, we need that to actually build our own drones here domestically, not just as a company, but here in the US. But of course, just being able to maintain and repair them is something that, you know, is very lacking as far as what we have to work with, again, not just as a company, but as a country as well. And then one of the other aspects that we're working on that makes Develop Air more approachable, we've gone out to some like middle schools and high schools, or robotics competitions that those middle schools and high schools compete in. And they're like, this is your mini drone. And it's like, yeah, I mean, for a drone to provide any real utility, it needs to be able to carry some sort of payload, really in addition to a camera more often than not. And so you need, you know, in this case, the Develop Air Mini has a 1.5 pound payload capacity. It's still not ideal, although, you know, we've flown Develop Air Mini, not inside this space, but the previous space that this class was in. So it is technically speaking capable of flying indoors, just especially for a lot of those competition sort of environments, not too ideal. So we actually have started, and this is actually new to Robin as well, have started a Develop Air Micro. So can technically fly outdoors like the larger Develop Air models, but really designed to fly indoors, especially for those competition environments, and also just making it more affordable, more accessible, to where our Develop Air Minis, they start at $999, fully built out in like a Pelican style case with a controller, battery charger, but still $1,000, you know, that's real money. And, you know, given we would like to get down to, you know, a couple $100 or less. We'll be really at like the $500 or $600 range for Develop Air Micro. But one of the great things about all these Develop Air models is we made them open source. So typically, if you've heard of open source, you think about that in the context of software. Well, I can download this software and then make any changes I want to it, maybe even resell it as my own, change the branding, whatever the case may be. What's less common is open source hardware. It's, I think, starting to come back, much like it was popular, again, in the early days of the PC industry. And that's where, you know, these Develop Air drones, as much as we're working towards making a drone that can be for anybody and everyone, so to speak, kind of like computers are today, the early days of the computer industry, like the first Apple computers, for instance, those were more along the lines of, what can I like buy this computer and then what can I get it to do, versus what am I going to be able to do with this computer right out of the box? You know, there's no software loaded on it. There was no mice, like, you know, to move your cursor. It was all keyboard based. There's no operating system. There's no word processors. There's none of these applications that we all just kind of take for granted today and use pretty much on a daily basis. And again, that's where the real opportunity in the drone space is today, is obviously creating the drones, but then also creating the software, which we'll get into, or some of what we call mod kits or payloads. So this is a LED or light show mod kit, a light show LED mod kit. And actually there's like a clear plastic enclosure that goes on top of it that we 3D print as well. And then if you've ever heard of an Arduino, we just wrote some very basic code, probably even with the help of ChatGPT, which has actually been surprisingly helpful on some of our software development efforts, especially those that it's really more of like an electrical engineering project, and our lead electrical engineer, not really a software guy, and it's been kind of cool to see just using ChatGPT to work through some of our software development problems. This is another form of a light, but a spotlight. You can tilt it up and down, turn it on and off, adjust like the brightness. here's actually a couple different versions of a weather monitoring sensor. So this is one that could be attached to like any of the side plates on Develop Air. And then this is one that was, like just bought off the shelf from a local partner company we worked with. We actually worked with a high school group for like one of their like hackathon sort of events over a 4-hour period. They designed and 3D printed the bracket for this weather sensor. They designed and 3D printed a bracket kind of similar to this one for the winch, but for a Raspberry Pi, like a little mini computer that they could attach to the bottom of Develop Air. Another part of those students, another group of those students that we are working with, then wrote code for that Raspberry Pi to then take the weather data from this weather sensor. And so when we like set waypoints around the school for Develop Air to go fly, essentially got turned into a mobile weather station where it was able at those waypoints to go collect weather data. And so now we're working on our own version that's just a little bit more refined, especially with being able to take that weather data from each waypoint and then visualize that within our software, where previously we just like took the weather data from that Raspberry Pi and then viewed it in like an Excel spreadsheet. So not the best way to actually make use of that data. But then one of the big elements that we're working on that really allowed computers to be used more by the everyday person and not just like the technically savvy developer or enthusiast, is computers have USB ports on them right now. So pretty much anything I want to do as far as connecting a keyboard, a mouse, a webcam, a solid state drive, there's so many different sorts of USB devices now, like the list goes on, but it's all just using one connector that provides the data connectivity, it provides the power that peripheral, that plug-in device needs, and there's no sort of software setup or configuration to be able to make use of it, right? Like when you plug in a webcam, maybe with very, very rare exceptions, you might have to go like download a driver or something, from a website to make it work. But by and large, right, USB just makes all these different devices plug and play. Where right now, if you want to attach any of our mod kits or a mod kit or like a payload that you make yourself, or for other custom DIY drones want to attach a payload to it, there's some sort of like software configuration work that you need to do to be able to tell your drone what you just attached to your drone and how you want to be able to control it. So we have this side plate system that we've created where it's all for kind of like dumb payloads right now, where again, I like plug in this spotlight that actually has two connections, one to control the tilt up and down, and then one to control all the electronics of the lights, the brightness, turning the lights on and off, etc. In typical software called like Q Ground Control or Mission Planner, actually out of curiosity, has anyone heard of Linux in here, like for computers? So if not, like this computer runs Mac OS as an operating system. This computer runs both Android as well as Windows, so it has two operating systems on it. Again, most Windows computers or Dell computers, etc., run a Windows operating system. And so there's essentially an equivalent of an operating system for drones, but it's just referred to as ground control software. And so the most popular one is called Q Ground Control. And I say it's the most popular one, but it's really probably the most popular outside of like the drone control application that comes with DJI drones, just because they're the only real consumer option right now. But if I pull this up, you'll be able to see it's just like a satellite map view, almost like Google Maps to some degree. This is actually zoomed in at a local drone park near us up on the north side of Atlanta. And it's very powerful software, but as some of our customers have stated, we have a drone program that we work with out of Elizabeth City, North Carolina, like up along the Atlantic coast, and they have a pretty great drone program, and students that are fairly far along and doing drone operation, especially maybe less so on like the development side. But they talked about how Q ground control is software made by developers for developers, right? And so it's kind of like Linux in that regard. Like no one here would really, including myself, be using a personal computer if you had to run Linux on it, right? I mean, you could do everything in Linux as you could in Windows or Mac, but again, you have to be more technically savvy and do a lot more of the support yourself, and right, that's not something most people want to do. So up until, and still to this day, we still use Q ground control at the very least for like setup and configuration. We do some testing with it still, but now we're actually making our own software that has launched. But let me show you some of the downsides, tangibly speaking, with this software before we get over to our own. Might make you appreciate it a little bit more. So I just set a takeoff location just using this sidebar over here. Select takeoff. If you see this mission start, I could set the altitude for how high I want the drone to start the mission at. So once it takes off, it will automatically take off to 50 feet. And then any waypoint that I set afterwards will automatically have that value previously set in that mission start tab. And so I can go in and change each of these waypoint altitudes manually. But now let's say I plugged in my spotlight, or better yet, since that has two connections, we'll just simplify it. We have this dispenser mod kit. So this is made for like dropping birdseed, fish food, small granular objects. If you're like me and you're a tool and you want to make it rain, you could like load up money in there and have a good time that way. But let's say I wanted to plug in this dispenser mod kit, and then let's say I want here at waypoint 3, I want the dispenser to open up and drop whatever seed is loaded in it. To do that, I now actually have to create another waypoint. I have to then change that waypoint using the drop down, going to advanced. Then I have to select set servo. For those not familiar with a servo motor, that's just what this motor is, with a little plastic arm attached to the drawer to push it open or pull it back closed. And that same sort of motor is also used to tilt the spotlight up and down. It's a little bit of a smaller one, but same concept. And then again, a little bit different, as this servo can actually spin both directions, 360 degrees continuously. The same sort of idea applies. And typically there's like a claw on the bottom of this. So we built the world's largest claw machine game. So you can like lower down the claw, raise it back up, just like you would see in a claw machine in the arcade. And then one other add-on that we're building for this is a little bucket, so you can like go collect water samples as well, using that same mod kit, just swapping out the claw for the bucket. But again, the principle applies for all of those. To be able to control them, instead of like for the dispenser just having an open and a close button, I actually have to tell it what servo I'm wanting to control. So again, we've already made that somewhat easier using the side plate system that we created. But going into the inside of Develop-Air, there's two main connections that we're going to take note of here. Down at the bottom of this Pixhawk 6C, that's like the name brand for this flight controller, or the brain of the drone. To use a computer analogy, this is like the CPU and the motherboard kind of all built into one. So all of your connections, like your GPS, your radio, everything is plugged into here. But then at the same time, like the actual processor itself is also built in. But down at the bottom, you have an FMU PWM out port and an IO PWM out port. So typically, in your IO PWM out port, you have your motors plugged in through ports 1 through 4. I know you won't be able to really see it from back there, but they're labeled 1 through 8. So you have 8 ports on this connector, and then another 8 ports on this other connector. this first IO PWM connector, typically in 1 through 4, being a quadcopter, you would plug in your motors. And so your motors would get the signal from these connections 1 through 4. And now here, if we were to set servo 1 through 4, we would actually be sending a signal to one of those 4 motors. So again, very capable software, but let's say I wanted to plug in our dispenser mod kit. 1 through 4 would be set aside for the motors. We have 5 and 6 already used in this first PWM breakout board, and then that leaves 7 and 8 available on this first one. And then this second connector board, it's also labeled 1 through 8, but it's really 9 through 16. And I'll show that to you in another software. It'll make more sense then. But again, if I wanted to control this dispenser mod kit, I would have to look at which PWM port I wanted to use. And so either running the cable through into the inside of Develop Air, or I can use like an extender like we did on this other breakout board. And so ports 8, 7, 6, and 5 are connected to the side plate on the back here. And so now I can see like port number 8, which would actually translate to 16, is on the far left. And so now if I plugged in the dispenser mod kit to this far left connector, I know I want to control servo number 16. So that's somewhat easy enough, figuring out like what these numbers mean, there's a learning curve to that, but there is good documentation to figure all that out. But now what there is not documentation for is, now I want to actually open this drawer, right? And so it says under servo here, it says PWM, and then the number that's highlighted for me to change is 1500. And so I'm just making this up, right? Because it changes from different mod kits. But let's say this closed right now is a signal of 1000. It all the way open is a signal of 2000. So now I need to keep in my head whenever I want to operate this, telling it to open at waypoint number 3, I want it to open all the way, so I need to enter in a PWM signal of 2000 for servo number 16. And then let's say I wanted to close it, I would have to then create another waypoint, fly to that waypoint, create another waypoint to then tell it I want it to close, and then again tell it servo number 16 PWM of 1000, and then that would close the dispenser mod kit. So that sounds super easy, right? Like, something that anyone could and would want to do to take use of a drone. So not really, but it is cool nonetheless that it is theoretically possible with free open source software like that. Now there's another program called Mission Planner that's also free and open source. And this is pretty much built by one guy, or it was developed by one guy originally, and then kind of like open source projects typically happen if they provide any value. You'll get more people come on board to them and continue the development as well. But as you can see, or at least in my opinion, this looks like software that was developed in like the late 80s, maybe even earlier than that. Again, very capable software, just not super user-friendly. It does give you a little bit more flexibility than that other program I was showing you, though, Q Ground Control, where this has a servo screen. So instead of like controlling the dispenser mod kit or any of our other mod kits at a waypoint, now using on-screen controls, you can control them at any time. So you could be manually flying your Develop Air with a controller, and then using these on-screen controls, tell the spotlight to tilt up and down, tell it to turn on and off, tell the dispenser to open or close, etc. But it's still using a very archaic sort of system to do so. So you'll see over here on the, and I'm going to drag it down just to keep them all in the same row or column. So you can see over here on this left-hand column, numbers 5 through 16. as I mentioned previously, motors 1 through 4 or numbers 1 through 4 are not listed because that's the motors, right? And you don't want to accidentally send a signal to, number 4, which would be motor number 4, and then speed up that motor while it's in flight, or slow it down in flight, or completely stop it in flight, and basically have your drone come crashing out of the sky because you accidentally sent the wrong command to it. So it is a little bit better in that capacity, but you could still see all of these numbers that you have to adjust. So let's say I plugged in my spotlight. I have 2 different ports, and as I just discussed it, this port on the far left-hand side is number 16. This one's number 15. This one's number 14. This one's number 13. So if I wanted to then adjust the tilt of the spotlight, I would plug that into number 16, let's say. And then if I wanted to control like the brightness of the lights or the flashing of the lights, turning them on and off, I could plug that into port number 15. And now same thing, if I wanted to then tilt the light up and down, I would then have to set these values. So again, don't know what they are off the top of my head. We can look at that in our own software. But let's say that's a value of 1,000 and that's a value of 1,700. If I were to send a value of 2,000, that might, break the servo motor by sending it too far, right? So again, very capable software, but you really have to understand what you're wanting the software to tell your drone or the payload attached to it to do. Otherwise, you can risk, crashing the drone or, breaking your payload or both. And then one other cool part of Mission Planner that gives you more flexibility than Q Ground Control. Both of these programs, you can actually take any game controller, and just like you would do like button mapping in a video game, like I want X to be shoot or run, or I want circle to be, reload or whatever, you can do all of that same sort of configuration to tell developer, I want to go into this flight mode, or I want to be able to control this payload. And that's all possible in Mission Planner. In Q Ground Control, you really only have the ability to fly the drone itself with a game controller, where I can show a video as well, like the claw machine that we built out. We had hooked up actually at the time we were using an Xbox controller. Now we predominantly use a PlayStation controller. But pressing L1 to lower the claw, pressing R1 to raise the claw, and then to stop the claw going from either direction, pressing triangle. And unfortunately, that's just a limitation of Mission Planner, where ideally what would be more intuitive, as you want the claw to lower down, you're just holding down the L1 button. And then whenever you let go of the L1 button, the claw just stops, being lowered down. And then you hold down the R1 button, the claw raises back up, and then you let go, the claw stops. But unfortunately, Mission Planner, you trigger the button, and then you have to press another button to send another action, in the case of the claw, to stop it. So again, very capable, just not user-friendly. And unfortunately, fortunately for us, there's a lot of opportunity in it. People aren't going to use drones just because they're capable of doing what they need it to do. It also needs to be convenient to do what they need it to do. And so that's where our software comes in. This is called World's iVue. Let's see, okay. And World's iVue is actually, again, more like an operating system than just a drone control platform, even though the only application that we actually have operational, and even sometimes so, at least fully operational, is our drone control app called iVue RC, or iVue Robo Control. And so here we don't actually have our developer connected, but we set a default location of our drone park. That way you can create waypoint missions and just kind of play around with the software ahead of time before you're actually going to fly with it. And one of the other big upgrades that we've made compared to Q Ground Control or Mission Planner, as trivial as this seems, If you wanted to go like create a waypoint mission in either of those other programs, you have to like zoom into the point on the map where you're going to be operating, which if you're not already there, where like the software can use your computer's location to automatically zoom into that location, you have to be like a geographical, map using wizard to be able to figure out like, I need to go to from here being in Peachtree State, I need to go to Alpharetta. I'm going to be operating at this business, and I want to create that waypoint mission or that flight plan before getting out there, right? So you either have to like zoom into that spot on the map manually, finding it, or if you get like the coordinates from Google Maps or whatever, you can import those into Q Ground Controller Mission Planner. But who wants to like figure out the coordinate system and then do the conversions to get them from one format that Google uses over to the format where that Q Ground Controller or Mission Planner uses? So instead, we have a search bar. Right now, it just works with addresses, but for instance, I can then go create a flight plan at my parents' house without having to, manually navigate over to my parents' house, right? I'll just zoom into that location, and now using the missions screen, I'm just going to assign the mission to drone 1. I can now start clicking points on the map, and that will tell my drone where to fly. And then I can give it other actions as well, like telling it the altitude, the heading, so like how it's rotated, how long I want to pause there. And we're still working on the features, like if you wanted to control any of our mod kits, kind of like I showed in Q Ground Control, where you had to like do set servo, and then we're simplifying that to where any of these waypoints have a mod kit drop down, and you can select the action for each of those mod kits. And again, we've made controlling these a lot easier in our software, even though we're not quite to the USB point that I was talking about earlier, where it's all just a standardized, sort of plug and play connection. We are working towards that. You could see the spotlight, as I previously discussed. There's 2 connections, one to control the vertical tilt, one to control the lights. But once you actually have them connected, instead of like dealing with all the PWM servo number nonsense, you literally just have a slider to tilt up and down the spotlight, or you can hold down the tilt down button, hold down the tilt up button. And then same thing with the lights. So you can dim the lights, brighten the lights, use the slider or the buttons to do so, or you can put the spotlight into a flash mode. And this is like the type of software and paired with the hardware that's really needed to make drones more usable than just taking photos and videos, especially for the everyday person that may not be a photographer or videographer, at least in a professional sense. And that same sort of concept applies for the dispenser mod kit, a little bit more simple, right? Just an open and close button that you can hold down, or use the slider to control it as well. And now for the people that are a little bit more advanced, we do give you the flexibility. If you want to like create your own payload or modify our own, you can actually adjust the port number that you use, adjust the PWM value. So again, we don't want anyone to have to get that technically involved, but it is there as an option should you want to do so. And one of the other aspects that we're working on that we don't have implemented quite yet, everyone's and their mother's talking about AI nowadays, how AI is going to like radically change our lives, but it's really just another way of just saying software, and we know software has already been changing our lives for the last few decades or more. And again, same thing, even though it's now just all wrapped up under this marketing term of AI, like machine vision, object detection, like that's all been around for a decade or more in even commercial applications. Thinking about how a drone, beyond like the delivery context I was talking about previously, let's say you have a dog in a fenced-in yard and your dog gets out of the yard, right? You might get in your car and go like driving around the neighborhood looking for him, calling out for him, whatever. What if in addition to that, or instead of that, you could actually just like outline the area on the map? Have any of you guys seen or done a mapping mission with a drone? let me show you guys what that looks like. Unfortunately, we don't have like the mapping functionality built out in our software just yet. Technically speaking, you can do a mapping mission by manually setting the waypoints in our software. But just for the case of demonstration purposes, opening up Q ground control, and I'm going to set up this basic mapping mission. So now you can see starting up here at waypoint 2, ending over there at waypoint 33. In the case of us, Develop Air would fly up and down along these almost like swim lanes sort of paths and automatically be capturing photos along the way. And here in this case, it would be expected that Develop Air would take like 48 photos to map out this area, not in like a super high quality, high resolution sort of format, but you can get more detailed either by flying at a lower altitude, a better camera, or even adjusting like how close these lines are together or how many photos you're taking along each line. So now thinking about that, where this is very commonly used concept within commercial drone operations, but now having your drone connected to the internet, right? I already mentioned a Raspberry Pi, maybe not the best example, but another like companion computer attached to your drone. So like the processor built into these flight controllers, these are powerful enough to like run all of the software to keep your drone nice and stable in flight, like just the actual flight control. And they can run another one script at a time. So if you guys have heard Python, that's a fairly common like low weight sort of scripting language. That's even too heavy duty for these flight controllers. If anyone's familiar with the video game modding world, there's a common scripting language called Lua, and you can write Lua scripts. So we actually write a Lua script for this flight controller to control all of the onboard position lights, and then on the rear we have a couple of battery status lights that change from green to yellow to red to flashing red based off of the battery level. And so that's great and all, but if you wanted to do like object detection, machine vision sort of recognition, you need a more powerful computer either on board the drone or, as I just alluded to, if your drone's connected to the internet, right? Just like your smartphone, right? You have a SIM card in it. And while you can technically use your phone, you know, anywhere you have Wi-Fi, the real value comes from being able to use it anywhere with a data plan, right? And so that same concept applies to a drone. You get a data plan for your drone, and now instead of having the processor on board the drone, you could be talking to like an AWS server, a Google Cloud server, even your own local server, you know, if you wanted to do so. And so real time, your drone's capturing photos, sending them to that server, and doing like a real-time object detection. So instead of like going back to our software, if we were to do a mapping mission like that, instead of typing in an address, be able to type in dog, or actually do like a reverse image sort of search, actually upload a photo of your dog. And so now as the drone's going up and down that area taking photos, it's inspecting each of those photos real time to see, hey, is there a match for your dog that you uploaded a photo of, or just any dog, right, that you entered into the search bar, and then drops pins on the map wherever a dog is detected, and then gives you like a list view showing you like all the results that were found within that area, right? So that's one example of how this will come to be used from a consumer perspective, but then thinking about it from like a law enforcement perspective, that exact same setup could be used for, there's like an Amber Alert for a gray Honda Accord, right? And now every police officer can send up their drone and either, again, connect it to the internet, or for security, privacy, you know, reasons, they need to have a processor on board the drone. They could actually have a model that's trained for all sorts of like makes and models of cars, right? As an example, send up their drone, have it map out the 2 square mile area around them, and either type in gray Honda Accord, or they could even get more granular, gray Honda Accord, license plate number, you know, whatever. And then same thing, all of the pins are dropped wherever a gray Honda Accord is detected. And then taking that approach, you know, to the commercial aspect, and there's a couple of use cases that we've already done some proof of concept for, both in roofing. Now imagine, I don't know if any of you guys live in an HOA, but a lot of like neighborhoods like this will have one common trash service, and you'll get like a discount for everyone in the neighborhood, using that same common like trash pickup service. I think the same will happen with even like roofing companies, where now a roofing company would be able to send up their drone, map out a whole neighborhood, and instead of looking for a dog or a gray Honda Accord, they're literally just saying roof damage, entering roof damage into the search bar, and now pins are being dropped on every house where roof damage is detected, right? And even though I kind of glossed over this and didn't mention it, the great thing about these drone maps or 3D models that you create, they're one-to-one scale, just like these satellite maps. So you not only detect where the damage is on these roofs, but you can also get all the measurements for the roofs as well. So the roofing companies will know, hey, here's how much material I need to buy to replace all of these roofs that have damage on them, right? And so another aspect of using this sort of like machine vision, object recognition, or AI built into our drone control software. I mentioned some of the agriculture work that we've looked into or have done to some degree. Worked with a farm off the coast of Charleston, South Carolina, and they plant sea bean seeds, and it's like some vegan superfood or whatever. Not my cup of tea, but I thought it was a cool mission nonetheless that we could use Develop Air for. And at the time, we didn't have our own software, so we just set waypoints for where we wanted to open up the dispenser mechanism, drop the sea bean seeds, close it, fly over to the next waypoint, open it up again. But what would be much better is having, a drone like Develop Air with a camera attached to it, also having the dispenser mod kit. You could then tell, hey, this is all of my property where we could possibly plant sea bean seeds. How about you, drone, go and detect all the best places to plant those sea bean seeds instead of me telling you where to plant those sea bean seeds. So now it could go, hey, these are the most ideal locations for planting, and then either part of that same mission or even, it lands, you send it back up with the dispenser mechanism. That next mission, it's automatically knowing where to go plant those sea bean seeds, right? So yeah, those are a few examples of how we're building our drones to be more accessible, more approachable to the everyday person. Again, not quite there yet, very much still a development platform, both in the hardware and the software sense. But as I previously mentioned, the last aspect of what we do is to help drone operators of today that are already looking to make money with them, not looking to get too much into the technical aspects of it, doing photo and video work. And you can kind of think about our business here almost like an Uber sort of business model, where most of our jobs are around the metro Atlanta area within Georgia. But we connect freelance photographers and videographers, which oftentimes now include a drone within the tool belt, right? And send them out to real estate listings, construction sites, events that need some sort of photo or video coverage. And while a lot of the jobs that we do are kind of more traditional photo and video jobs, we've done quite a bit of work doing aerial mapping and 3D modeling, and even like corridor scans for utility companies, construction companies, solar companies, right? And so some of it does get a little bit more technical in nature, but a lot of it is, just marketing material. And so if anyone's interested in working with us on the content creation side, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And then recently we've gotten into our own original short form content called Florida Man. And not all of it is drone related, but I will show one of our episodes, and if you guys want to see any more, we can. They're all just a couple minutes in length. This is our episode 2 that we just posted, not this past Friday, but the Friday beforehand. And let's see. Features Develop Air.
Chinese out here flying electric birds, spying on the neighbor folk.
Damn it, baby, where are you going? I'm fixing supper. You know what, why don't you just go play video games with Mama's new boyfriend?
Sorry, baby. Man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. But I'll bring you back some of them electric birds to fry up for supper. Dumbass.
Oh, Lord have mercy. It's just one of them dang droids. You love them Star Wars movies.
All right, you twoies. Let's roll.
Oh!
Tell you what, plenty of my fellow Americans are ready to lay down and accept this invasion of Homeland Security. But I sure as hell ain't. Check it out. The main man's about to go wide open on this whirly bird's feathery ass. Got her inside. Open fire. Down, you Timmy. Your main man's down. SOS. Hey, baby.
What? I am fixing supper.
I'm gonna need you to take me to the hospital.
Again? I can't believe you chasing after that damn droid. You could have gotten yourself killed. Now I can't tell if them sirens is the police or the EMTs.
Quit your fussing, baby. I'm talking to my loyal followers. Anyway, you twoies, you've been on another whirlwind adventure with your main man. Anywho, while them Chinese was spying on us, I'm at least glad that Mama's new boyfriend was able to entertain himself with a damn new video game.
And even though you guys have seen everything that's really worthwhile, always just got to point out Developer making its acting debut as Chinese spy drone. So, any case, so yeah, that's pretty much an overview of the work that we do. So open to any questions as you have any, and if not, there's plenty more that I can show and demo and hopefully inspire you guys to want to join us in building the future of drones. But if nothing else, if you guys just want to get into business, I'm an open book there as well. I'm more than happy to share my experience in starting a business out of high school, or did a little bit of college and then got sucked into drones. Yeah.
You have like internship opportunities?
Yeah, so we do offer internships. Most of our interns work with us on the hardware or software development front. We do have some on the media production front, but more traditionally, it's actually better on the media production front. That typically comes in the way of contract work. But now, yeah, we do offer internships that more often than not is just for the experience. But yeah, if that's something that you're interested in, we can certainly work that out. Yeah.
When it came to like the port system that you have for this, is there a reason why you didn't go with something like a USB, and why you specifically went for a port?
Yeah, so I don't know if I'll actually pull up the material. You guys might just have to take my word for it and then look into it deeper if you want. But Intel, they actually publish all the interference that comes from USB 3 and USB 3.1. And I think that also applies newer, but it's fairly well documented that these like GPS units will operate at a frequency of about 1500 megahertz, something like that, or 1.5 gigahertz. Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, they're in like the 2.4 gigahertz range or 2400 megahertz. But USB, it can kind of fluctuate, even though it's like a little over 1,000 megahertz. It can like cross into the GPS frequency range, sometimes even interfere with like Bluetooth, and Intel will post out like Bluetooth modules, that like little USB Bluetooth modules that you plug in to your computer can sometimes interfere with your Wi-Fi and vice versa. And so really it's all an interference problem why USB itself can't be used on drones. Now, we have used like USB 2.0 webcams, like low bandwidth, older standard. That's fine, but yeah, just the newer, higher bandwidth standards like USB-C would be ideal, right? It's one connector. You can, well, you can plug it in both ways, but right, it's hard to mess up that connection. It would support pretty much every power requirement that most of our payloads have, other than if you wanted to attach another battery through like that USB connector, you would be limited in that regard. We have built a flamethrower previously as an attachment for develop air. But if you wanted to have like another sort of sprayer mechanism, that may be higher power than not like the newest USB standards can handle. But yeah, long story short, predominantly interference for USB. We are working towards another connector that would have like all of the flexibility of USB as far as like bandwidth and power connectivity, not quite as like streamlined of a form factor, but would actually be more robust with like all the vibrations happening on a drone. And then we're using a protocol. Let me pull up the dev environment. I think it's included in here. We have what's called this CAN bus page, and there's a standard, and okay, it's not even all listed there, but there's a standard in the automotive industry that they use for like attaching your infotainment system to like your steering wheel controls, to maybe the HVAC controls or the AC controls in the back, and you sort of rear screens. Like, so it's able to handle all these different types of peripherals under like one standard protocol. And we're doing that to where instead of having like these very basic sort of like dumb connectors, it'll be more like USB that any of our payloads will use that same connector. And when you plug it in, it'll automatically detect what you plugged in and then pop up like the specific spotlight dispenser or whatever, instead of you having to come select it and then tell it what ports you plugged it into. So yeah, working towards it, not quite there yet. A lot of work in progress, right? No. Any other questions? All right, I'll show the flamethrower one. I know you guys are like just dying to see that. We're gonna need to turn off the No, I'm kidding.
This room does not have cameras.
Yeah. Other than the ones that we brought, let's see. Oh, I'm in the iVue Media channel, switch account. iVue Robotics. Manage videos. This was before it was even called Develop Air. Oh my God, it was so loud.
Don't go too high.
Safety and reason. So as you can tell, even after just like the first shot, the range was severely limited. And that's predominantly because we pressurized that fuel tank. There's like a bunch of like brass hardware on the other side to where you could just like plug in a bicycle pump, you know, just like you would pump up a bicycle tire or a soccer ball or whatever, pressurize the fuel tank to like 40 PSI. I think the tank itself could handle like 160 PSI. And I think we calculated that like 120 was like really like, none of that is safe, right? But the safe max. And we decided, let's just see what 40 PSI would get us. About a 10-foot shot for like the first shot, and then, you know, about 4 feet after that. And then that's actually the last time that we flew that flamethrower. We attempted it another like time or two. It didn't quite work out that well. Worked out better than the first time that we ever attempted to fly the first version, where this, as much as it's like hard to get like a close look and see how non-refined and prototypey it is, or was, we had another version that you guys have, especially like maybe with those DJI Phantom drones, I've seen people like take off a drone from like holding it in their hands and then land with it like back in their hands. Done that many a time. So we're working on version 1 of the flamethrower, and I was like, oh, you know what? It doesn't, the flamethrower is like too tall for the landing gear, but I'll just do a hand takeoff and landing.
Some of the guys got to get a bus. So
Oh, yeah.
before we go, thank you.
Yeah, not applause worthy, but yeah, thank you. Yeah. All right, now the real fun begins. Now, yeah, so we built the first flamethrower and decided to take it off from my hands. And, you know, me being the big brain genius that I am, you know, safety first, not really. Yeah.
You said the 24-year-old was a little younger than you, so how old
I am 28. Yeah. I'm a boomer, right? I know, dude. I'm like, no. Yeah. So, yeah, I put on these grilling gloves. I was like, if this thing catches fire, at least I'll be protected, right? And then decided to take it off, actually plug in the power to develop air, and it immediately started shooting the kerosene out of the sprayer. I was like, oh, well, that's not great, but unplug it. Some of the smart engineers that were there with us decided to review the wiring and looked all okay, plugged it back in, same thing. Unplug it, adjust some of the wiring on site in 30-degree weather, in the perfect conditions for doing on-field repair work and then, configuration. This time, plug it back in, and I'm still holding it in my hands, facing away from me. And then not only does it shoot the kerosene, but if you guys have seen those electric lighters, we stripped one of those electric lighters, and so the kerosene will shoot through a little spark of electricity, and that ignites the kerosene and creates the flamethrower. And so the electric arc also came on when we plugged in the battery. And so if you guys are familiar with Mario, the video game character, I look like Mario with the fire flower, just, holding develop air, pointing it up and down. And then Brian, who is with a similar sort of camera system to that to, record the whole thing, he decided it'd be a better idea to run over with the fire extinguisher. And so we don't have any of it on video. We have one photo of the aftermath of all the fire extinguisher, the extinguishant or whatever on the ground. And then, we inspected the little enclosure, which I could pull up, but it was an acrylic, plexiglass, 3D printed, held together with electrical tape. And inside was the kerosene bottle, and the outer wall, the plexiglass, had actually melted. I was like, had that gone much further, that would have blown up, and these grilling gloves probably wouldn't have done too much to protect me there. But on the sake of innovation, we stuck with it, got a version 2 off the ground. And even this, I was thinking back after the fact, hindsight being 20/20, as they say, right? Just off camera, there's a couple younger neighborhood kids, playing, catch or whatever. I was like, man, had that gone wrong, that could have gone really wrong, but it didn't. So that's all that matters, right? Never a dull day in the world of drones. And then there's Blue Ocean Quest. This is another.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
What are some of your biggest projects that you've worked on?
So this is actually one of them right here. So both in terms of financial scope as well as the scope of the drone itself. This is a large crop spraying drone that we helped this guy modify. He bought it as a crop spraying drone. The drone itself was $40,000. He just paid us another close to that, let's say $30,000, $35,000 to do modification work and support with him. Even though that's deer corn or whatever sort of Walmart seed, this is actually designed to deploy clam and oyster seeds along the coastlines or estuaries of Florida. So their clams and oysters are natural filters. And so he's gotten now some contracts after quite a few years of getting this all pulled together. And we were using Q ground control at the time. Now there's a special software for the agriculture drone he's able to use, but we showed him how to use that software to operate this drone. And that was another, going back to the comment that one of the students made about Q ground control being software for developers by developers. Drones like this, or even $500,000 drones, will oftentimes rely on that Q ground control software. And that will oftentimes mean those drones never get flown because people don't want to learn how to use this software on a $500,000 drone, much less sometimes a couple $1,000 drone, right? So that's where we're always trying to think of how can we make the software less intimidating, easier to use, and then, of course, pair that with hardware as well. I can actually take advantage of it. But this was really a couple years to get this to the point that he was able to actually go use it for missions. And then he's actually come back to us more recently to help him with another attachment for this drone. Instead of deploying small clam and oyster seeds, which are like the larvae, actually deploying full-size clams and oysters with like a trapdoor sort of system. So you get to the waypoint, and then the door will open. It'll fly along like the line that it's deploying those clams and oysters along. And then we wrote code for an Arduino to actually lift that gate back up once all the clams and oysters are deployed, and then automatically trigger the return to landing to go back to the launch location so it can be filled back up and then resume where it left off. So yeah, there's been a couple of scares, if you will, with working on that drone. We had one time we went up to Ball Ground, Georgia, where we have a guy that has some decent property, let us do some test flying there. And we had 2 of the propellers on the wrong motors. And with a quadcopter, it'll just take off and like instantly kind of like flip over. With an octocopter, it got off the ground and it was woo, 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 and you know, could have gone a lot worse, but luckily able to get that back down on the ground. And then another time we were flying it at our local drone park, didn't have all like the switches on the controller set up properly, and so it was like 20 feet off the ground. And again, it's like a small helicopter, right? You know, if a helicopter crashes, falls from the sky, debris going, you know, for quite some distance. Similar to this drone, we had it set up kind of like the DJI drones. I don't know if you have flown those, where if you let go of the controllers, and same with these Develop Air, it'll just hover there, you know, and await your next input. Or if it gets low enough on battery, it'll automatically trigger like the return to landing or the landing. Well, with how this controller was set up, the moment you let go of the controller, it just lost all power to the motors. And so it did like a free fall from like 20 feet off the ground, which is not a lot of time to, you know, respond. And luckily, like 6 feet off the ground, was able to give it enough throttle to, you know, keep it from coming down and, yeah, potentially killing us all, you know, at the very least maiming us. So yeah, it's a lot better to learn, you know, the drone components and how to set them up and configure them, you know, at this scale versus that scale, both in the, you know, danger factor, if you will, as well as, you know, money. Because quite frankly, we would have been FUCKED, had like that drone, you know, crash, and like we would have gone bankrupt, you know, like having to like replace the drone for him, you know, so. Yeah, thank you.
I am interested in like an internship. So is there like a contact I could do?
Yeah, I actually don't have my wallet. Robin, could you connect? Yeah.
I think I've got a card somewhere.
If not, Robin has all my contact info, and he can get it to you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks. Show me this.